Welcome everyone to the Unboxing Careers podcast, where we shed light on what different careers are really like so that you could choose a career you'll really love. Today we're diving back into the education field, this time with a middle school teacher, Mark Domeier. But before we do, let's talk briefly about unboxing thoughtful gifts. At thoughtfulcollection.com, you can shop from a wide selection of curated products you can feel good about, helping you express friendship, gratitude, and love. The next time you need to, don't just gift, give thoughtfully at thoughtfulcollection.com.
Where do I go? How do I know what I should do? Unboxing career.
All right, I'd like to welcome to the show Mark Domeier, 7th and 8th grade teacher up in beautiful Minnesota. So Mark, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, you bet. Great to be here.
All right, I'm going to start with this. So I mentioned, I said middle school, but you teach 7th and 8th grade specifically. I don't know when it starts. It starts in 6th where I am. So why don't you give us the audience a little bit about like how long you've been teaching, where and what subjects you focus on, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sure thing. Yeah, and you're right. We start with 6th grade too. Our middle school is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So I am starting my 29th year of teaching, all in the same school district. I taught in Richland, Heartland, Ellendale, Geneva. If you put all those together, we're NRHEG. And I've been there my whole career since I graduated from college. So I teach 7th and 8th grade English, and I do that by choice, which some people think is a little crazy, but I love it. I can't imagine doing anything else.
So I saw the hyphenated school, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to let him say it. I'm not touching that thing. And I figured there was an acronym or abbreviation in there somewhere for it as well.
Yes.
So, Mark, did you go to school? I'm assuming you did, because you said once you graduated, you went right into the profession, and 29 years later, here you are. You are the first guest we've had on this podcast who are doing what they went to school for. So I guess the question I would ask you is, when did you decide you wanted to go into education as a profession?
I always say it's a very ironic story because I was a freshman in high school and I grew up in New Ulm, Minnesota. And I had a particular teacher who I don't think was a great teacher, just lectured every day. We took notes, we took tests, whatever. And I remember sitting there one day and I thought, holy cow, if this guy can do this, anybody can. Maybe I want to do this someday. And it wasn't English, but English was what I felt most comfortable with. I love to read. I love to write. My mom basically helped teach me how to read before I went to kindergarten, so that was an advantage. And I look back, my 3rd grade teacher, Mr. Galvin, had us write once a month a big story, and just inspired me and really pushed me that way. So it seemed really natural that that's what I would do. I went to school at Winona State University, which is on the Minnesota-Wisconsin border, right by the Mississippi River. Graduated from there, and it's so funny because we have such a lack of teachers today. It's hard to find teachers. So when I applied for my job in Richland, the superintendent told me a few years later that there were 90 to 100 applicants for the position. We don't get anything close to that anymore. I forget how many job openings we had this year in our district. We maybe have 5 or 6 new teachers. We didn't get 90 applications total. So it's changed a whole lot. But I always say I'm halfway in between where I grew up and where I went to college. And I can't imagine landing in a better place than I did.
So why did you choose, 2 questions here, but why did you choose the 7th, 8th grade, the middle school versus say elementary, high school, or even, higher ed?
Right. So my licensure in Minnesota, it allows me to teach 7th through 12th grade.
Okay.
You're either a K-6 teacher or a 7-12 teacher. There's some other little things you can do, but since I wanted to specify in English, I got that secondary degree. When I got my job here, I started the day in the high school, and I was teaching seniors and a couple of electives, and I finished the day in our middle school, and I was teaching 7th grade. 3 years into my career, 2 of our English teachers retired, one in the high school, one in the middle school. And I was given the choice. They said, which one do you want? Which one do you want to kind of move into full time? And there were a lot of reasons. One of the reasons was my wife and I had just bought a house in Ellendale, which is where our middle school was at that time. 4 blocks away from work. That's easy. I was coaching 8th grade girls basketball, 7th grade baseball. These are the kids I'm coaching. And honestly, the cooks we had there, oh my gosh, the food was amazing. It was really great. But I really did enjoy working with those kids. There's just an energy, and if you use that energy the right way, you can accomplish a lot of great things. And even a couple other times we've had teachers retire or leave the district, including a year ago. And I could have easily said, you know what? I want to change it up. I want to go teach high school. And I didn't really want to do that. I really like where I am. So.
All right. My second question to this, which I probably should have asked first, but you said you're sitting out, you're a freshman in high school, you're sitting there in class, and you think to yourself, if he can do it, anyone can do it. Education is not one of those things where I would think that you would jump into and be like, I don't like kids at all, but if he can do it, I can do it, right? There's got to be something there, a desire in there that drove you to the education road more than just saying if he can do it. Can you speak to that a little bit about what was sitting there with you?
Yeah, I think so. I think I shouldn't say always. I was about 7th grade when I kind of came out of my shell and discovered that was, fun to interact with a lot of people. Nobody believes that I was shy back then, but I was very shy. And started to take on some leadership roles and learning that I can help, influence people and work with people to get things done. That was a real draw to it. I love the idea that every day was a little bit different in what I do. And even just like my dad was coaching one of my summer baseball teams, and I would help him. I was playing for him, but we'd also talk about the things we were going to do at practice or how the game might look. And just that ability to, kind of work with other people, no matter the age really, but I was drawn to that, I think, partly because of the age I was at the time. Like this is when I kind of decided, so I sort of like that kind of thing. I don't know. We even had a couple of times in high school where we had flip-flops where you got to be the teacher for a day. And so I got a chance to do that. And I actually was for the band director. And so I did that and thought, yeah, this is for me. This is fun. This is, not the same old drudgery all the time. And I think part of me too was thinking already, how would I do this differently? Well, now I have to prove how I can do this differently, how effective it can be. So hopefully that's kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah, it sounds like something just spoke to you. And once you actually did it, you're like, yeah, you know what? I like this. So, we hear this a lot.
So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to get into the drudgery now, if I can, with you, Mark.
Sure.
Let's talk about what a typical week looks like for a teacher. And I tell people, don't be scared to get into the boring stuff. So walk us through. I know this is going to vary a little bit, but walk us through what a typical week might look like for you.
Yeah. Because the first thing that comes to mind is, I don't know if there is such a thing as a typical week, but we already looked at
marketing. I feel you 100%.
Yeah, we looked at our schedule for September. We have homecoming at the end of the month, and there's a mock crash one day, and there's this, and there's this, and there's the chances of having consecutive 5-day weeks without an interruption, without something happening seems weird. But if there is such a thing as a typical week, at least in my school, we have a 7-period day, and I teach 5 classes. I have one period as my preparatory period, and then we also have a supervision. So, it's a little bit of that prep time and kind of planning. And I'm always trying to look a week, 2 weeks ahead a little bit. So as I'm teaching and as I'm doing things and getting a grasp on where we are and how long it's taking us, I'm always thinking ahead too, like, okay, what's next? What's next in my scope and sequence? So we're far past the point of I have to run down and stand in line at the copy machine. Occasionally, I make some copies, but so much is technology based now. So a lot of the prep time and what we're doing is going on our learning application that we use, putting materials on there for the students. Um, and then there's, of course, the grading portion of it and all of that. But I'm such a big believer in, I don't usually spend most of my time in front of the class. I don't lecture very often. If I'm in front of the class the whole class period, I don't think you need both hands to count how many times that happens in the school year.
Okay.
I want to introduce the material, teach something, and then have them working. And then if you need my help, there I am. Like I can assist you right now. I commonly tell my kids that if you work hard in my class and use your class time well, the amount of homework you have is very minimal. I mean, kids are busy, and I want them to be busy. And I want them to, I don't know, go have fun sometimes too. If you're choosing not to use that time, well, then you're going to have more homework. But really, ideally, I think that the homework they should have from me is going home and reading a book every night for a while. That's it. So, yeah, and every school varies a little bit. Some schools go on a block schedule where there's 4 longer class periods, but we're pretty set in on the 7 and start school about 8:30, finish a little bit after 3 o'clock. Lunch filters in there somewhere too, and so kind of probably a lot of how I remember school being when I was in school, and perhaps you too.
So school starts at 8:30. About how long before school are you getting there? About an hour?
I usually get there no later than 7:45.
Okay.
Depending how the morning's going and how many levels of Candy Crush I've beaten that morning, how long it takes me to do my Wordle, that kind of thing. But I like to be there plenty early, partly just because I need to kind of sit in my room and look around a little bit. Some of my good friends that I've taught with for years are getting there, and we can kind of visit a little bit and get in that mindset, that mind frame of, okay, now we're ready to go. So yeah, 45 to 50 minutes early, I'm usually there.
And how about your summers? How do your summers look? I'm assuming that, and the answer might change. I'm going to put some words in your mouth, but it might change now compared to, say, 15, 20 years ago to what you're doing this summer. But I mean, that's a misconception, which I'm going to ask you for misconceptions later.
Sure.
So I'm going to preload you here. But misconception is, everyone gets their summers off, right? And they're cruising. And most of the time, that's not the case. But tell us a little bit about your summers.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit to that. Most of the time, if I'm doing something in the summer that's school related, that's me choosing to do that. That's me saying, I'm going out to find something to enhance what I do. There's not really a lot that's required of me to do outside of my duties with our union and some things I do there. I look forward to my summers. Actually, one of the things I do is a lot of times I read a bunch of young adult books, trying to find good ones for my kids to read. So in a sense, I'm preparing that way, but it's also something I really like to do. I do try to find a lot of time to relax. But I find that a lot of my weeks, there's things built in, sometimes related to helping kids because I work on ball diamonds. I help mentor young umpires because I love baseball in the game, and doing those sorts of things, help organize some baseball tournaments with our local organization, doing things like that, because I'm such a believer that you show kids other sides of you and you recognize the other sides of them. And so in the summertime, I don't think it should be weird to see your teacher somewhere else in the community, doing something else. I don't just live at school. I don't have a cot in the back of my room. So when you see me in other places and I see you in other places, go to the county fair and check out your projects that you have there, because that's a really important thing to do. So those kind of things, finding different ways to interact with kids, but also finding time to decompress. Teaching is harder than it's ever been. When I first started, I thought, well, this is easy. And things change along the way, and the older you get, it's a little more difficult. And everything goes pre-COVID, post-COVID, because things change so dramatically there, and we're still kind of dealing with those repercussions. So it's tougher now. I need time to be able to just do what I want to do, which involves reading, watching a few things, taking my wife out to lunch, that kind of thing.
Was that the same early in your career when you were just starting out, or were you working more in the summertime when you were just starting out?
I was working a little bit more, especially before my kids were born. And it's still a lot related. I ran our summer rec program, but I was looking for something to do that I would get paid to do because to supplement my income. Um, and for many, many years, I umpired a lot in the summer. I've had to step back from that due to some foot issues, but again, that was supplementing my income a little bit, but never to the point where I felt like I needed a full-time job. I think I always recognized that some of that has to just be me time in the summer.
Very good. And how about things you like? What do you like most about your job, and what do you like least about your job?
Hmm.
And this can be day-to-day type stuff, right? It's like, I
Well,
hate the
sure.
admin stuff, or
Yeah. We talked about this at our staff development days we've had here preparing for the new school year. One of the things I like the most are the people that I work with. And sometimes that's a student, a lot of times that's a student. But like I said, I have a group of people that I've taught with for many, many years. And I'm so fortunate that two of my best friends teach in the same hallway as me. And so we spend what we call 4 minutes at a time solving the world's problem in between classes. When you can find that and you enjoy the people you work with, because let's be honest, not every kid is going to be, sunshine and roses every day. And some of them aren't going to like me, and that's okay. I hope that they appreciate and respect what we do, but just being able to work with the people. And like I mentioned earlier, I get to dictate to some degree what my day looks like. I have a lot of flexibility in what I am teaching and how I teach it. And I've always been given a lot of latitude. I appreciate that a lot from the various principals and superintendents I've had. Hey, you want to try this or do it this way? Go ahead, try it. We trust you. That's a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
What do I like least? That's actually really easy. Standardized testing. I despise standardized testing with such a white-hot passion that I just sent a letter to the editor to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune today because one of their front page stories was about test scores, and it's such a worthless thing. But again, when there's irony in my life, the irony here is I got hired partly because standardized tests had just started to become a big thing in Minnesota back in '96 when I started. And I got hired, and part of my day was interventions for kids who hadn't passed the test. That was my job, to work with them. So I got my job because of them, but I think they all need to go away and stop wasting our time and money.
Did you have that same feeling before you started working in the intervention, or did the intervention to you show you that, these kids are actually smart after all, and they're just either not good test takers, they had a bad day, something like that?
A little mixture of both. Some of the, yeah, to me, tests are always a snapshot of one particular day. I have seen over the years kids who come in and they had a bad time at home that morning or the night before. Something negative happened. I watched a boy break up with his girlfriend right before we started taking the test. Okay, if you're going to tell me that these tests matter, well, guess what? Especially with middle schoolers,
Yeah,
they're they struggle with that kind of stuff, and not everybody. Well, now in Minnesota, at least, they can have breakfast. Breakfast and lunch is free for all students in Minnesota. But it used to be, are they coming to school? Did they have breakfast this morning? Because again, the home lives are not always peaches and cream there. I think there are always kids who need help, and I wish that we had both the funding and the ability to find people who could work with kids more one-on-one. I found in the years that I did that working in small groups where there's not a lot of pressure, hey, we're just going to look at inference, or we're going to work on main idea today. And when I can just work with you one-on-one instead of 25 of you, it does make an impact. And we saw gains in our tests, and then the state changed the way we do the testing, and then everything kind of got flushed down the toilet. So
gotcha.
some kids will always need that help, and I wish we could provide it for them. I always encourage kids, if you need extra help, come and see me. Uh, let's work together. Let's do that, and get you to a good place.
It's a tough age. I'm dealing with it personally in my house, so it's a tough age to have your kids go to the teacher and ask for additional help. We try to reinforce that a
Right.
lot, but it's a tough one. I do want to stick to that age though. So middle school, especially for you, 7th, 8th grade, anyone who might be listening to this that thinks they might want to go or explore this age group, what's the most challenging part of dealing with kids this age? Because you're hitting puberty around this age, right? You have all these changes, attitudes start flipping. Like it could be a bit of a toxic. My kids' passion, and they're awesome. I'm just waiting for that day where that light bulb switches.
Well, and I joke with parents that when your child is coming into my class, they're starting into the age of evil, because no matter how good a kid they were, they will test you at some point. They just will. And we did the same thing. And I always thought I was a pretty good kid, but I tested my parents and at times my teachers. It's tough, and the older I get, it's even more tough to. I try to relate somehow or understand their world. I mean, kids are the same now in many ways as they were when I started teaching all those years ago. Kids are kids. They just have different toys. They have different distractions, and sometimes at a higher level of things than we ever saw in the past. A lot of anxiety, mental health issues compared to what there used to be. So it's really tough sometimes, like you had said, it's tough for a kid to come and ask their teacher for help at that age. And it's equally tough for us to know what's going on. There's not a lot of kids who are going to come in and say, hey, mom and dad are yelling at each other last night again, or I didn't get supper last night. They're not coming to their English teacher probably to say that. I have heard it, but they're not going to seek me out. So you don't know what's going on. And sometimes if you know what's going on, it helps you understand their behavior a little bit. Here's why this kid is acting out. So that's really difficult. And, kind of along with that, is it as accessible as people should be these days with our magical little computers that we hold in our pocket? It feels like it's harder than ever to contact parents. I used to be able to make a phone call home or call them at work or whatever, and they would pick up the phone and answer it. Now there are parents who see a school number and won't ever answer it and won't ever return an email. Well, I want to work with you to help your kid, and I need your help too. I always say there have to be 3 people involved, and it's the student and the parent and the teacher. And if not all 3 are involved, we're not getting anything done. So finding that ability to communicate in an era where it should be the easiest it's ever been. I don't have to dial long distance. I don't have to worry about stuff like that. I have email on my phone. I should probably not, but I do. I get emails sometimes at 8:30 at night, and I'm going to respond to them. And I think that's important. I'm a believer that if I get an email, I should respond within 24 hours. I'm a professional. I should do that. I think parents should be professional in that way too, and they're not always.
Yeah, nature of the beast, I guess. But you are right. So I find it amazing when I email my kids' teachers. Like I'm settling in from work, so sometimes I'll email them at nighttime. I don't expect them to get back to me right away because it's after hours. I'm a big work-life balance guy, and they usually respond pretty quickly. Right? Yep. Sometimes it's within half an hour, and I'm like, "Whoa, what are we doing here?" So I appreciate your approach on that, because I think for the parents that it matters to, it's important, and it goes a long way.
Yeah.
I want to shift a little bit, Mark, if I can, to advice to those maybe in high school. You can extend this to college. Some of the advice might be the same if there's differences, but anyone who either thinks they want to go into education, is maybe flirting with the idea, hey, this might be something I'm into. What pieces of advice might you be able to offer them? And this could be in terms of skills to develop that will help you later. It could be clubs or organizations to get into, something that maybe you found helpful for you.
I can speak to this a little bit because I have a daughter who's in her last year of college, and she's going into education. And
there you go.
It's fantastic. And she knows the positives and negatives because she's seen it her whole life at home. Dad at his best and at his worst. I think that, she got opportunities in high school as she was toying with this idea to work with kids, to have opportunities to be in front of a classroom, to do things like that, to explore that, to be part of different clubs, like being on student council where you're going to work with elementary students and you're working with all the kids in your school. If you think you want to be a teacher, and it's a little bit of the path I took, I was on student council and I was doing all these other things, find those leadership opportunities, because when you're a teacher, you're a leader. You have to be a leader. And, work with people and work with different types of people, and don't always be comfortable. Find those things to be uncomfortable sometimes. But the more experience you get in doing that, because, I've seen a lot over the years, like you might know science or math or English really, really well. That doesn't mean you're going to be a good teacher. So the more experience you have working with people and facing conflict and dealing with things like that, the better prepared. If you can't handle conflict, don't do that. I mean, it's just going to happen. You could be the greatest teacher in the world, and you're going to have some kid who thinks you're just dumb, and they're going to push your button, or some parent who comes after you. It's going to happen. So those types of opportunities to work with other people, that's huge in what you're going to do. I do think it's a bit of a calling, and I think that part of the reason that we don't have as many people who want to be teachers right now is partly because it's viewed as being a really hard job. And it is a really hard job, but I think a lot of jobs should be hard. If you're professional, it should be hard. I think another, my union will get mad at me for saying that. Everybody says, oh, teachers don't get paid very much. And that's true from the perspective of, based on the importance of your job, probably not an equitable pay scale. And it was tough early on. But the more you're in it, you get to a point, and especially if you further your education. I have a master's degree. You get paid a little bit more when you do things like that. Where I'm not, there's a point where you don't go paycheck to paycheck anymore. But I think that's every job. I think, your marketing job, a lot of other jobs, early on, it's a little bit tough.
I've been there.
Yeah, we all should. And sometimes that helps us relate. I don't live in a school district that's particularly wealthy. We have a lot of kids who are, at the poverty line. We have a lot of kids who, before the state passed free lunches, a lot of kids who qualified for free and reduced lunches. So, hey, I understand. I remember what it was like to eat a lot of ramen noodles or, things like that. I still don't like food to go to waste. I have leftovers. That's what I might bring to lunch the next day, that kind of thing. So that misconception bothers me a little bit. And again, some people want to tout we should get paid more. Well, of course we should. There's no doubt. Where's the money coming from? That I have no idea. I'm okay though. Don't run away from this because you think I won't make enough money. You're not going to be rich. But the other things counterbalance that just fine.
Excellent. Very well said. I appreciate that. So you mentioned a misconception there. So I was going to ask you about misconceptions about the industry. I'm going to maybe frame it a little bit differently for you. What is a common misconception about working with middle schoolers?
Well, it might be that people who work with middle schoolers don't do it by choice, like you're the low end of the totem pole, or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that we're all crazy that we do this, and some people would probably contend that I am. I just think, each different level of education, you find your niche. Like I could never teach elementary. I worked with some of those kids when I did a summer rec program. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm doing this for the paycheck because I can't. I can't do it. Other misconceptions is that maybe, kids are also, that mindset. They're a teenager now. They're rude. They're disrespectful. They're everything. And as I mentioned earlier, I kind of joke that they become evil at this age. But evil is a relative term because 90 to 95% of my kids are great kids. They are respectful and they do their work and they do that. Does that mean they never push the boundaries or the line? Of course not. Of course they try to figure out what they can do and get away with because they're kids and their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed yet. So really, so many of our problems are from such a small minority. And usually, as I mentioned earlier, if you're able to dig in, you're able to kind of figure out why that's happening. There's some outside influences that are making that happen. So a lot of that, kids are really great. They really are. And as I said earlier, kids here in 2024 are so much the same as they were in 1996. They just are. And probably back in the 80s when I was going to school, we're a lot the same. So it's not the kids that are the problem most of the time.
Very good. Great answer. How about leave on a high note here, Mark? What's the most rewarding part of your career?
I just had one of these today. When you have a former student who lets you know something that you influenced them with. I had a student today tag me on Facebook. He had noticed something that somebody had put out, a different school district, not ours, had put out on social media, and it had a spelling error in it. And he tags me in this, and he says, "Can I still get extra credit?" Because I used to give extra credit for finding spelling and grammar mistakes in the paper and stuff. And so he remembers that, and he noticed it, and he thought of that right away. Kids who come back and say, "I still remember this." One of my favorite stories is that I've taught the book The Outsiders for almost my entire career. It's a fantastic book. I would say if you didn't read it in school, your teacher did you a disservice. And I had a former student who, when she was a little bit older, that book so inspired her that she got a tattoo that says "Stay Gold," which is a key theme to the book. I'm like, holy cow. Well, when you hear stuff like that, and a kid says, you put me on the path to this, you helped me do that. And it doesn't even have to be like English related. You cared about me. You wanted to talk to me. You were willing to listen to me. Those are the kinds of moments that you go, holy cow. Like, that's why the money matters, but it's not the most important thing in the world. It sounds so cliche, but you're so rewarded in so many other ways. Hey, we had an open house the other night, and I had former students coming down. Well, you don't have to come down and see me. Like, you're not in my class anymore. They just want to stop and say hi. I just want to check in. How's it going? How was your summer? That's awesome. That's the best part of the job.
That's a beautiful story, and it's got to make you feel great to impact someone's life in a positive way like that. Right? It's got to be phenomenal. So kudos to you, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah.
What did I neglect to ask you today that's important for people to know about teaching 7th grade English? It could be as small as, and by the way, this is personal here, good books for 7th, 8th graders to read. Good series. So feel free to throw out anything I might have neglected here.
Well, like I said, I've taught The Outsiders for many, many years because I think it's just one of those classics and how many parents had it. I'm a believer, though, like I don't have very many books. We read that. We read a great book called The Long Walk to Water. It's a very short book, but it's based on a true story.
Me and my son have both read that.
Yeah, yep. It's fantastic. And then we read the play version of The Diary of Anne Frank in 8th grade. And that's so impactful on kids. And I was able the last couple of years to have a Holocaust survivor Zoom with us and talk to us. And these kids are just in awe. Like they want to understand that time period, which is fantastic. But I want kids to pick out a book that they want to read. A lot of kids struggle because they can't find something good to read. My best friend in high school hated reading. And after he went to some school after high school and he then he was unemployed for a while, and he picked out a couple books about sports. He says, "What have I been missing this whole time? I love to read. I want to find that book for you." That's my goal every year, is that every kid, I can find them a book to read that they say, "This is the best thing ever." So I have lots of great books. It's, what do you like? Do you like fantasy? Do you like mysteries? Do you like sports books? Do you like outdoors books? Gary Paulson's a big hit. Anything Gary Paulson writes usually is good for reluctant readers. I have big comic book collections in my classroom because I think a lot of kids struggle to read because they have a hard time picturing what's happening. And I love comic books. I'm sitting in my office surrounded by 14,000 comic books. That might help you, if that's going to help you if you struggle. But I just want to find something you like. There are not a ton of books that are so universally loved by everybody. My own daughter told me, "Dad, I didn't really like The Outsiders." 90% of the kids do, but not everybody does. So that's okay. So, but then on the other hand, I think my son did like it when he came through. So who knows?
Awesome. All right, Mark, last question for you here. I think I know where you're going with this, but we'll see if I'm right here. You've got to choose a different career. Teaching's out of it, that you're going to love doing. What do you think you're going to choose?
If I could, because I do this on the side, I would do play-by-play for sporting events.
That's where I thought you were going with it.
I do that for our high school teams. I do the PA announcing in the gym or on the field. And then I also run play-by-play on the live stream, which is one of the few good things that came out of COVID, as we started doing that for sporting events and stuff. So I love it because I love sports. And again, it's still interacting with, kids is what I do. How cool it would be to be on a Twins broadcast or something. But as they said in an early Seinfeld episode, they usually get former athletes to do that, and I wasn't much of an athlete. So, so I love doing that. As you can tell, I love talking and talking about things. So that would be really, really cool.
Well, I think that's a cool thing where if you like broadcasting, don't want to go into it, or you like things like that, right? You mentioned you're part of a union, right? So you have responsibilities from that side. So you're doing other things related to your education job. I think it's a good example where you could still be a teacher and dabble your hand in broadcasting, or leading an extracurricular, or going on, mathlete trips, or whatever it kind of is at that point as well. So I think it's a nice little tangent you could throw in there.
Yeah, the idea of coming to work and going home at the end of the school day, and that's all you do every single day. No, there's so much more out there, and be involved, just like we tell our kids to be involved. We should be too.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Mark, it was a pleasure having you. I appreciate you sharing some insights with us. If someone has a question for you, what's a good way for them to get a hold of you if they want to?
Well, there's a lot of ways. I guess I'm on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it.
I just call it Twitter.
Yeah, you can find me. It's at MRD1973, year I was born. I'm on Facebook too, just Mark Domeier. There's nothing special about that. You could find my email address is a little complicated. I can say it as mdomeier@nrheg.k12.mn.us. So you have to rewind that a couple times to write it all down. But people can reach out to me anytime. I love talking about this stuff. I love promoting the things that we do at our school and working with kids. And I really want there to be great educators here when I retire someday. When I leave, I'm not just leaving. I want there to be somebody who takes my job and does a great job.
Excellent. We'll link some of that stuff in the show description or the website. Email addresses, we'll probably just code those so they don't get scraped. But check out the website and you can contact Mark if you need to. Hope you enjoyed today's episode with Mark Domeier. So if you want to explore more careers or unbox your own with us, please check out our website. And until next time, I can't talk. Until next time, be kind to one another.
Unboxing careers, unboxing.